It's always great to have an opportunity to share what you're really passionate about. And if there's one thing I'm really passionate about, it's about the promotion of health and well-being in schools. I'm an educational psychologist by profession, so some of you might ask, now what are you doing here? You're supposed to sit in your room and see children. I tried that, but it didn't work well for me. So I engaged with community psychology. And once I encountered community psychology, I never turned back. Because community psychology emphasized the importance of health and well-being as essential. And I idealize a colleague by the name of Isaac Preletensky, who is originally from Argentina. And he wrote an article to say that there is no wellness without fairness. So in essence, we can stop talking and say before we have fairness and equity, we cannot have wellness. But I think it's worthwhile to work on it in the meantime. So today I'm going to try and give you 5 essential mind shifts that I think is needed if we want to enhance the quality of life for the learners in our schools. And I am obviously generalizing, but I acknowledge that contexts differ. But I'm trying to give a broad outline of things that then can maybe applied within each and every context. So it's basic principles. So let's go and see what happens. The Human Science Research Council in 2017 did a survey to show that mainly half of the population still do not have quality of life in South Africa after many years, that we are still battling. The interesting thing is that most of those people who do not have quality of life is between 5 and 16. So that means no school can say that I have no responsibility towards health and well-being and quality of life, because we are sitting with a major population who need to be enhanced towards quality of life. We are sitting with them in our schools. So therefore, a school must understand their social responsibility, that it's a social context. We must enhance well-being. Then, as I say, schools should become inclusive, humanized, and coherent spaces. That is someone from the UK, but then we also have the work of Aslam Fattar, for those of you who know some of his work, who wrote that we consider the full and ever-evolving humanity of people in schools. And then there's arguments coming up that we have almost become dehumanized in a sense. We've become robot-like in schools in a way. And I think sometimes we feel it with the stress, because we in higher education experience that same kind of stress sometimes. And we feel like robots. And therefore, the quality of life can then be enhanced through the promotion of health and well-being. Now, many of you who have been in this business for quite a while would say to me, but Auntie, what are you talking about? Since 1994, we are talking health promotion and well-being in schools. I completely agree. It's true. It's true. We are talking about it. And we have policies about it. So what is the situation? In 2000, we had the national guidelines for the development of health promoting schools. Who of you are familiar with that policy? Remember that. Remember the development of it. Can I see? By way of hand, do you remember health promoting school framework? Yeah, people are familiar with that. And then it was the well-known things, the safe and supporting teaching and learning environments, the strong community partnerships, the curriculum interventions, the support, and then health promotion as well. So we have that in place. And then at a later stage, now I'm going the wrong way, sorry. At a later stage in 2012, we had the integrated school health policy. Can I see maybe by show of hands who's familiar with the integrated school health policy? Are you all? You're just giving me a nod. You know, you're looking at me like, we are not children, we are teachers. Don't give us that. Okay, I'm sorry, I apologize. So these policies are familiar to us. What is interesting is I see these policies as interrelated. So the ISHP should be read together with Education White Paper 6, should be read with care and support for teaching and learning. These things cannot be seen separately. The problem is, do we see them as integrated? And even if we see them as integrated, do we integrate them? So in a way, that is the problem. The problem that I observed in is that the promotion of wealth and health and well-being, is not considered as an essential part of schooling. I don't know if I might get a nod for that one, that we still see health and well-being as something separate from schooling. That's one of the problems I observed. You might differ from me, or you might say you agree with me. So what happens? The academic performance and achievement are prioritized. We mainly focused on the academic achievement, and sometimes, if I may say, at the cost of our health and well-being, both for teachers and for learners. Schools are then labeled as dysfunctional. I have a serious problem with labeling schools as dysfunctional, because it means that we do not understand that these schools have particular challenges that they have to overcome. And what do we call functional schools then? This is a kind of a dichotomy that I do not agree with. I think all schools are functional and dysfunctional at the same time. And I'm sure many of you as principals sometimes feel that I would like to show people that there may be dysfunctional moments, but there's also very, very functional moments in my school, although on the surface it might not look like that. The emphasis is mainly on ill-being. So what we've done, we have policies, but we focus mainly on the problems, on the ill-being, on the things that's going wrong. When you come into schools, they will often tell you will all tell me about the problems. We will talk less about the strengths, about the good things that's happening. And what can we do about it? So for me, my research was about what can we do about it? How can we bring a different way of thinking about it? So what is needed? And if we look in the literature, and we can debate about it, is this literature relevant to our context? But it is actually a broad, overarching umbrella almost, or we can see it as a holding space. And that is that we should integrate our efforts. Now, I'm sure if I ask each one of you, and I had the time, to just take a piece of paper and write in little circles or maybe in puzzle format the beautiful, wonderful things that's already going on in your schools, you will all be able to write down things. But the question is, how do we integrate that? So that is the thing. Well-being is sometimes something that happens in the everyday interactions. We look at these videos, the clips on the Facebook or YouTube or wherever, and we see there's a teacher in America giving his kids high fives. Then we all go next week, maybe we'll also give our kids high fives. Those are beautiful, wonderful things, but we should integrate that into one holistic approach. And how can we do that? So that's my challenge to you today, to go and think, how can all the beautiful things that's happening in my school already come together in one space that I call a health and well-being space? So I don't have time to explain how, but I'll give you a little bit of an idea of how we can do it. Now, if you look back at that, you will see that the focus in promotion of health and well-being should be on 3 levels: individual, relational, and collective levels. And that is the work of Isaac Preletensky that's referring to those 3 elements. Now, you can think for yourself in your school, how well are the individuals in your context? What do they maybe need? And there are particular key aspects for each of these ones that I don't have time for today. Maybe another time when we can have a proper seminar and a longer time to explain it. But relational well-being, how much do we attend to relational well-being? We often think of relational well-being just as individual relationships, but there's the collective relationships. Think of a classroom. If you think of all the relationships in a classroom, it's a whole matrix. And then collective well-being refers to the social justice issues, the aspect of inclusion, all those things that we talk about, diversity, discrimination, the bullying. It's all in the collective well-being. So how is it going with the school as a collective? And that's all we should look at. So individual well-being, you can just look there, open up opportunities for individuals. Relation, connect members of the school community. I often ask teachers the basic question of, do your children in a classroom know one another? Do they know one another's names? Do you ever make time to say, greet one another, talk to one another, take time to share something about yourself so that we can build? We read beautiful things about sense of community, sense of connectedness in schools, but what do we do in the everyday interactions to enhance that? And therefore, often, well-being teachers might say, I don't have time for this extra thing. But it's not extra, it's built in your everyday interactions. Collective level, you have that. Then proposing a way forward. Now, based on research that I conducted, and I'm not going to explain too much about the research, I conducted research in 6 schools in Franschhoek to do what I call the establishment of a holistic school well-being or well-being process in these schools. And what I'd like to propose is that based on what I've seen in those schools, the 6 schools started well-being support teams within the schools. It's been sustainable for 6 years now, these teams. There is a little bit of a sponsorship from a trust, so that can be argued that they have a little bit of money. But if you work with these teams and if you listen to them, it's really not about the money. I mean, the ones they did for 750 Rand, they involved 4,000 learners in the whole valley in a basic kindness day, where they each they bought stickers for the 4,000 children, and they wear it, and they had to show acts of kindness towards one another. But then that act of kindness, it's not the act of kindness, and next year there's nothing. Then they started building up. Whenever they have an initiative, they'll put it in the basket. And next year, that may be the same or a different kind of activity. So they started putting all these things together. And the team took responsibility for that. And from there, I started thinking, I think that's what I want to promote. I want to promote this idea of integration, of a holistic understanding of we are all busy with wonderful things. And often we become one another's enemies. We start competing. Oh, I have this NGO and they're doing this, and this NGO don't want that one close. We all need one another, and we need to bring that together. But to be able to do that, we need 5 mind shifts. The first mind shift that we need is that we need to rethink the purpose of schooling. We need to rethink the fact that we're only focusing on academic achievement. And I know that it is coming from the top, that's the thing that must happen. There must be academic achievement. But the question is, what's the damage we are doing? And are we really attending to quality of life? Another question would be, can we get academic achievement without enhancing quality of life and without enhancing well-being? Can we do that? Can we only push for academic achievement? The dangerous thing is that we've heard of our top 10 kids who's very good at school committing self-death. And then we're suddenly shocked. And we're like, but they achieved so well. Why? Because they're emotionally and socially maybe not well. So we must rethink the purpose of schooling. And we must become those people who say we feel that a school should be more than just about the academics. We must get together to say what are at the core of this. We don't say the subject's not necessary. That's very, very important. But what is at the core, at the basis of what we are presenting and of how we present these subjects? The second one is understanding human behavior. The most important thing that the complex responsive process of relating theory, that's a theory developed by Ralph Stacey in the UK. The most important thing we learn from that particular theory is that we cannot control human behavior. Now, you can think for yourself as much as you want to that you can control the behavior of another person, and you can go try it. You can try, and you see you will not be able. You can influence behavior. You can influence behavior. And I don't think I'll have time, otherwise I could have shown you how I can influence your behavior. But I wouldn't go there. I'd rather finish the 5 mindsets. And then if I have a little bit of time, I might show you how I can influence. But it's very important. We don't think about it often. Because we want to say, if I say to a child, sit down, do this, and even if someone think that they can say to us, sit down and do this. We have that resistance, you know. I try to show the students about this arm wrestling thing, you know. If you push, the more you push and the other person resists, the more difficult it becomes to get along, to go forward. But if the one person leaves a little bit of space, the other one leaves a little, so it becomes like a dance. And that's where this influence comes. But now in schools we're very upset about the demolishing of corporal punishment. But it's actually maybe a good thing, because now we learn to dance. Because previously we just said, you'll get problems. And we force, but now we need to dance. But maybe it's then because we don't know how to dance this particular dance. But relax and think about your life, because all of you are experts in human behavior to a sense, because you are a human, okay? But there are certain things that we can still learn. But if you tap into your own life, you would see what the difference was between people who tried to control you and people who influenced you. So let's rethink human behavior, how we understand human behavior, because then we may start the dance with our children that moves us forward. The next mindshift is the provision of support. Unfortunately, inclusive education in this country led us to believe that support is only for the children with serious problems. One of the motivations for my research and my work is because of this fact, that we focus so much on ill-being and problems that many children are left without support, that desperately need support. And I think the health promotion and well-being, if we bring back this holistic approach, we can enhance that space where all those children, and we've seen this in the schools where we worked, those children would come and say, it's so wonderful now, we also get support. It's not only the children who really have problems. And they even appreciate the support for those children. While they would be nasty to those children, they can start appreciating that children, because they understand we all need support. It's not only for some children. Then the responsibility for the promotion of health and well-being, that is the other thing we need to get out of the way. Because what we expect, we wait for the psychologist, the social worker, the non-profit to come and make the school well. But in essence, and that is also part of the whole argument that Isaac Brudens gives, the best way to promote health and well-being is to do it from the inside out. So you must, in your schools, and I want to encourage you as school leaders, to start a conversation about well-being, to start this conversation and to start talking about people. How do you see well-being? What would make you feel well? What's already making you feel well in the school? How do you feel about relationships in the school? How do you feel about this diversity argument? How do you feel about bullying? What do you think? So that we get a conversation going, because that's part of the complexity. We cannot have once-off conversations. And that's why things like this is a good opportunity, because as a forum we can come together and we can have chances to speak to other people with the same context or sometimes a different context, and we can start exchanging ideas. So that is about taking agency. And in the work that I've done, we had this designated team. Some people frowned upon it because they said we have school-based support teams, so why do you call it well-being support teams? In most of the schools that I work with, those two teams have become one. They're supportive. Mostly the chairperson of the school-based support team is also the chairperson of the well-being, so they work together very closely. It's just that the conversation about well-being has come into the equation. It's more open. It's not that we know it's somewhere in a policy, and it's only for perhaps the risk kids, but it's becoming part of the conversation. How can we be well? How can we be better off? And then the last one is the facilitation strategy. Now, whenever I come to a place like this, people would ask me now, what is your program about? I do not have a program, but I appreciate programs. But I think if we want to have an integrated, holistic process that can flow and that can continue and that can be sustainable, what we need to do is we need to think about a process, not only about programs. Because I came to schools and then they tell me these wonderful stories. And I think it's changed a bit because of the game changer programs, and those, I think, is integrating things a bit better. But often you hear about these people were in our school for 3 years. And I said, and now? Now they're gone. But they never equipped someone in the school with those skills that can take the process further. And what we lose this, because for so many years we had this, our children had the input, and then it's gone. In the process, what we've done is whenever an NGO move in, the wellbeing team would speak to them, see them, and ask them, what are you doing? So that we get a designated person in the team who can take that further. And we can know what those people are doing and how we can integrate it into this whole basket or bowl or whatever you want to call it. I should have used more pictures, I realize. But if you can think of a bowl or a basket, a nice big African basket, and you see all these things put in there. And now you think of a big bowl, no big bowl, but all these loose things lying on a table. If you can picture that in your mind, that's the difference. It's as basic as it is. My interest is in what should this bowl be. And that bowl should be, we think of it as a process. We cannot think of it as another program. And that is, to me, the on top we have the policy. And then we have wonderful things happening. But how are we holding all of that together? Now, once the last 3 minutes, I think I've done well with the time. I just want to say what the participants in this process said. They said the Wellbeing Initiative empowered us to take charge of the wellbeing in the school. They're no longer waiting for people outside to come in. This process includes learners, parents, and teachers, because we should consider our teachers as part of our school community. They're part of the community, but they're also part of the school as a community. The collaborative nature results in ownership. If you see that ownership, you always feel that's good, because they own it. And you sometimes fascinated by the fact that when people own something, what they can do. That it's far beyond your expectations. Then facilitated motivation and optimism, the school received the means to drive its own process. And at a certain stage, the trust wanted the university to hold the management of funding, for example. And I said, no, why? Because you want sustainability. So then you must start trusting and you must start giving over. We are not passive members, but agents of change. And people become agents of change and they feel empowered and they started using this language. And that is important. Then from the parents' side, we can really see that the learners are on a new level of engagement as a result of the work of the teams. Learners have a more positive attitude. Teachers indicate that they are looking forward to the school day. Now, this is not in general, we won't say everybody, but it's snippets of what people experienced pre and post. A discussion and a conversation that started about well-being. And as I say, it's been running for 6 years, and there's all kinds of other, there's so much more that I can share with you. But I just wanted to share, because I think it all started with that basic mindset change. And that is what I realized when I moved in initially. I had to first let people understand where am I. And those are the 5 mindsets that I identified. Now, this is the Franschhoek Holistic School Wellbeing Initiative 3, and I just thought I'll end off with that just to honor the team, because I always say to the team there, I could not have done it without you. So researchers are not as great as they look. They're just as great as the people they work with. Thank you very much.